everybody. It's your girl, Michelle, with Girls Talk Real Talk, because when girls talk, just about anything can happen. So today on our show, we have Dr. Michelle Thompson. I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Excellent. So, Dr. Michelle Thompson, I am the owner and CEO of Resistant Vision Coaching and Consulting, where I work with academics to get the work that they have on their computers out to presses and journals, and with lawyers who are exhausted and can't get the confidence to do the work they need to do to actually build sustainable careers.
Now, that was a mouthful.
Yes, it was.
That was a mouthful. So let's kind of back up. Let's talk about, because I remember when I read your bio, you talk about the challenges and you talk about overcoming challenges. So when you made that comment in your bio, what were you referring to?
So it's not unusual for particularly women, and Black women in particular, who become, PhDs or lawyers, to actually achieve these. Like, everyone thinks they're doing really great and like, oh my God, look, it's Dr. So-and-so, or like they're a lawyer, and everyone's real excited, but it often comes at the expense of themselves, right? So it's not unusual for people to end up hospitalized because they have serious health problems. It's not unusual for people to be incredibly isolated in their workplaces and not have colleagues that are actually backing them, or actually undermining what they're able to do. So those are some of the challenges, in addition to just doing the work, right? So if you have backstabbers, health problems, unbelievable stress, it actually makes it hard to, people don't think of academics as doing really hard work, but the requirements often for tenure and promotion are a book and several articles. And it's just as stressful practicing law. So you can't actually do that work if you feel like crap, but bluntly.
Well, I do know, I've got a couple of friends of mine who are actual attorney at law. And I do know that when they were in law school, it was a really push to make sure that they got published. And I never really understood the importance of them being published before they actually got their law degree and took the bar and passed it and all of that. So why is that pressure put so much on individuals that are taking the law classes, that are doing all that they're doing, to actually get in there and go after this publication? Because I know a lot of doctors do it while they're in medical school. I know a lot of other PhD does it while they're going through graduate school. So why is it so important for an attorney to be published?
So here's what's a little different. Well, I mean, the gap is closing between other doctors and lawyers. But here's the story: when you are, so the only way that you can publish in law school is to be on the law review. So the law review is actually a journal that almost every law school has, and it is the elite journal. Like, you have to have the best grades, and be thought of well by your professors, right? And so if you are on any editorial position on the law review, if your article is accepted for publication, that means that you're likely to get clerkships with a judge. And if you get a clerkship with a judge, you're going to get the kind of jobs that pay lots and lots of money. Okay. Or you'll be picked up immediately by firms that pay lots and lots of money. It's really, and many of us who go through law school have major student loans. And so it's really important that we're able to earn the kind of income so that we can actually pay back on the loans.
Okay. So I want to back up, and before we get into the other work that you do, I want to come back to Michelle. Michelle before she was the attorney, Michelle before she was the doctor, Michelle before she was the owner and the CEO of her own company. Who is Michelle Thompson?
At heart, she's a musician, which is probably not what you expected. But I was born and raised in Chicago, and I grew up with a sister, and my mother's vision is that we'd be really, really well versed in all sorts of things. And she thought, like, the key. So my parents were really raised poor in Jamaica. So they got to this country like, we ain't having that, right? Like, we don't have no more of that. So they they saw it as like, we're going to give them everything they need that they can actually move into and excel in the middle class, right? And so they thought an important part of that would be music lessons. And well, I would slouch. I'm 5'10", so I slouched all the time. And I was like, we're not going to have that. So she thought, you will do ballet. That'll help you with your posture. Hit or miss. But but one of the things that they thought would be really helpful for my sister and I to move through the class, barriers would be learning to become musicians. But so we started with piano. I started playing piano when I was 5. And then I joined the Chicago Children. She signed us up for the Chicago Children's Choir. I was 8 and my sister was 5 at the time. And I don't think they bargained on the fact that we loved it. But we absolutely, and I learned how to play flute when I was 8, which I also really, really loved. I still have a flute. I don't play it anymore. But yeah, no, we absolutely loved singing in children's choir. We actually would tour. It was a touring choir. We toured on the East Coast. We toured through the Midwest. So I've been, like, with children's choir, I've been everywhere from Vermont to Texas, not in the same trip, but all over the place. And it's music that when I've gone to churches, I've actually sang some of this music in those churches. It's like, it's stuck with me forever. And actually, since I've been in New York, I've sung with opera choruses, I've sung with church choirs, and there's that. There's a whole music. I'm actually just an artist in general. I also knit and crochet, so I've knit sweaters. I'm working on an Afghan, all sorts of things. Yeah.
Wow. So you're just a creative.
I am very creative, crazy creative. Yeah,
I can relate. I think it might be something with the reason why we're named Michelle, because there's that whole creative part to it. Mm-hmm. So as you were growing up and you love of music and the ballet classes and being raised in Chicago, how did you go from that to law school?
I remember being 12. And I was in my room, and I must have been mad at something. I don't know what, but I always had a journal. I kept a journal, I don't know, since I was 8. And I just started journaling. Like, what was I going to do when I grow up, and what was the life I wanted to lead? And lawyer was it. I was like, I'm not going to med school. I'm not happy with the sciences. I'm not doing that. And my parents actually kind of held out. Like, there were only there are a few options. I could be a CPA. I could go to med school. But I was like, I could be a lawyer. I could do that. I thought, I'll practice international tax law. I'll live in New York, and I'll sing in opera court, and I'll sing in operas. That's the vision I had for myself when I was 12.
Wow.
So it was like, I went to college. I must have looked like a bat out of hell, I'm sure. But I went to college, and I got there day one. I'm like, I'm going to law school. That's what we're doing. 4 years, I'm going to law school. I don't know where, but I'm going to law school. But I did. I went to Grinnell College in the middle of Iowa. And then I went to University of Iowa, which is an hour down the road, literally. And then I practiced law in DC.
So how interesting was it to practice law in DC?
This was in the early 90s. And it was I don't want to say at the height of the HIV epidemic, but it was kicking. Like, we don't really hear about it now, probably COVID, but that aside, even before COVID, we don't hear as much about HIV except for the commercials, but let me leave that alone. But at the time, people were dying really easily from the disease. The discrimination was unbelievable. And it was also the time when Newt Gingrich came and stormed Congress. So it was humbling to do that work with my clients. I helped them get Social Security benefits. At the time, people who were HIV positive were barred from entering the United States. There was one procedure that you could use to help people get visas, and I actually had success with a French-speaking African client to do that. So I did. So that was. I just felt very honored to do that work. I actually wanted to do more of the policy advocacy to change the policies that Congress was coming up with, because I knew that would be devastating to who I worked with. After I had a fellowship that funded that work, and then the place where I worked actually organized into a union. So right after the fellowship ended, I actually ended up doing I was a union lawyer. I bargained collective bargaining agreements for healthcare workers in Baltimore and Washington, D.C. And that was also absolutely amazing work. I got to see this healthcare workers union forced Johns Hopkins to raise their wages substantially, right? And they set new standards in hospitals across the region. It was just, I'm honored to have done the work I did. Absolutely honored.
Wow. So you've had quite the journey to get to where you are today. So you did that work there, and then what made you go after the doctorate degree?
Psychosis, no, okay. I don't have any regrets. It just makes you wonder who does this. My spouse is actually a professor of education, and we met, and they said to me, you could get a doctorate, and I'm like, who? Oh, me. Right? I was like, that's interesting. So but on a real tip, I mentioned that both my parents were Jamaican. Dead. And on my mother's side were the descendants of Maroons. They were slaves who ran away from plantations, and and I was always fascinated. That was one of the first historical stories I ever heard, right? Because it was my family, right? And I found that completely fascinating, and that actually drove me to say, maybe I should go and earn a doctorate and learn more about this and dive deep and see what the implications of it are. So I did. I went to New York University. My primary field is the African diaspora, the movement of people across the from the African continent. And then my secondary field is colonial Latin American and Caribbean history. So I've actually publish, but I focus on 19th century Jamaica and how Jamaica tried to get rid of these maroon populations. They were like, not so fast. No, we're not going anywhere. So yeah, that's
how I noticed that you had said in the bio that I had for you, you had said that your research focused on the descendants of the runaway slave community in Northwest Jamaica in the mid-late 19th century as they survived Jamaica's repeated attempts to dissolve their community. So it also goes on to say that you currently have an article at Press and you are writing a monograph, Resistant Vision.
Yeah.
The post-emancipation realities of Jamaica's
Akampong Maroons.
That's it. Okay. Maroons.
Yeah.
I wasn't even getting ready to mess that whole word up. I was about to do some serious damage to that word. And so it's from 1842 to 1901. So great segue into that. So what is, number one, for those individuals who do not know, what is a monograph?
A monograph is a book written based on primary source material, not mathematical data, not lab data, but I actually go into. So this is what historians do. We go into libraries. And we ask them to give us their old papers, and we make note of that, and then we're actually using these documents to create narratives, based on those documents. I aren't making up stories, right? But we use those as the basis for creating narratives about what's happening. So I've actually and so in Jamaica, if you're looking at 19th century or earlier history, they have all countries have a national archives. Ours is based in Washington, D.C. You might have heard that President Trump is trying to prevent people from getting hold of some of his records from the National Archives. That's the purpose of the archives, that people can see what happened, right? Okay, but don't let me digress. I actually spent a lot of time in Spanish Town, Jamaica, which isn't far from Kingston, going through the papers that Jamaica has for the Akampong Maroons. And so I used that chunk of it's like hundreds of pages of stuff to actually write narratives about the Akampong Maroons and how they pushed back against the Jamaican government. So actually that article is actually published in Caribbean Quarterly. It came out last year. Yeah. And I still keep
interesting
the monograph. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so you've done this work. Now we've talked about the childhood, we've talked about the lawyering, we've talked about the work that you've done as from what you've actually got your PhD in. I want to go back to the lawyer part, because I know that there are young people that may be watching that's like, I'm interested in being a lawyer, but I'm not for sure if I want to go through all of the rigmarole that is required to be a lawyer. And I remember you talking about being published and what that means to the future of the individual. But let's go back to when you were in law school and those experiences that you had in law school. Is it true, or is it somewhat true to say that today we see a lot more brown faced lawyers than we have previously?
I think that's I think that's probably true. Here's the rub, that there've been fewer and fewer people going to law school over the last 5 years. That the industry's actually they've noticed that there are fewer and fewer graduates, but there are definitely more people, brown skinned people, going to law school than ever before. Absolutely. And I
So,
think for many of us, we're actually the first in our families to do so. So it's a different kind of a vibe than if you come from a family of lawyers, right? So I'll put it this way. Um, my motto in law school was C equals JD. I was not going for law review. I was just like, oh, my job was just to get through the program. That was it. And that was because this was all so new to me. Like, like, what are we doing? How do you approach the courses? How do you think like a lawyer? Like, all of that took time. And so my sister went to law school later. We did opposite things. So I went to law school and then I got a doctorate. She actually started a doctorate and then left and then went to law school. So we literally, in NYU, we both were shifts passing in the night through that particular institution. So I actually remember she was facing her first semester of law school, and she was in Chicago. And so she came to spend Thanksgiving with me. And so I said, okay, let's talk about how you're going to do your exams. Something no one had ever said to me, ever, right? And I said, this is how you're going to approach it, right? And I said, criminal law. Here are the questions. Boom, 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 boom. Torts. This is what you're looking for. This is what you're going to ask. Contracts. This is how you're going to approach it. This is what you're going to ask, right? And I went through every single one of those courses first. She took notes. My sister got straight A's in law school, right? But that is a complete reflection of the fact that I'm not saying that she's not brilliant. She's brilliant, and it actually is really helpful to have someone who can say, "This is the way. Here's the road. There it is."
so you have basically taken what you did with your sister, and you have now created a company that you are able to do that not only with lawyers but also with female executives, to help them see the success and to live the lives that they are capable of living without the stress being the Debbie Downer in their lives, to where they can't appreciate the accolades and the success that they're getting.
It's interesting. I never thought of it that way, but that's true. Like, I completely rely on what I've been through, both as a law student, a lawyer, and then what I've done to earn my doctorate. And I completely pass that on to what people, yes, that's exactly what I do. I'm like, okay, this is what I've learned from my experience. This is actually, these seem to be best practices, right? So if you're a lawyer, if you actually tell your clients when they can expect to hear from you, they'll bug you less. You can do their work. It's amazing, right? We're not actually taught that although everything with the law actually is very profoundly intimate with people's lives, we don't actually they don't train us on how to interact with people. So things get a little, no, they don't. Like, we learn case law. We learn how to analyze case law, and that's kind of it. Which it's an important part of practicing law, but the whole business of, like, how do you interact with people? How do you tell your clients bad news? Like, all of that, we don't learn that, right? For people who are earning doctorates, we acquire a lot of bad habits as we're actually trying to write the dissertation, right? We're like, I've got all day long, I'll write all day long, and we're exhausted, and you can't keep that pace up doing that kind of work all the time, right? And so I'm the one who's like, okay, look, change your pace. You're actually going to get more work done if you actually slow down and do it. If you actually plan your work, don't just like go in going, okay, I'll do no. Plan what you're doing and take steps. And that's how I got through it. I had my son, when I was doing my field work, and I was doing a lot of work in Spanish Town and also in Accompong, he turned 4 in Accompong, right? So he was little when I was doing this stuff. So I really had to navigate the research and writing with literally a kid on my hip, right? And so I learned a lot about how to do that little by little by little, because it's hard. You can't write when there's literally a child on your hip.
So in the work that you do now, so let's say I'm a professional woman, I'm a CEO of a company, and I'm struggling. I've got the clients, I've got the business, but I'm struggling. And I come to you and I say, Dr. Michelle, I'm struggling. I don't know what my problem is. I've got the success, I've got the respect, I've got the distinction, but some mornings I just don't want to do it.
So there are a few things. I mean, number one, one of the things I am always asking clients is, do you actually really want to do this? Like, we actually can succeed in things we don't want to do. And maybe maybe being a CEO was a good idea at some point, but it's not anymore, right? And we get to change our minds and do different things. So that would be the first question I would ask. But the other question is, how are we working, right? One of the things that's really important with me, with clients, is actually to set really sturdy boundaries, right? So you can't meet with me before 9 a.m. I don't care. I don't care if you're in Europe. I don't care. I don't care where you're located. My 9 a.m. is the earliest I'm going to start working. And I am not going to work. Generally, I don't work after 5 p.m., right? Those are just sturdy boundaries. And I always take an hour off for lunch. I'm not going to just go rolling through the day, right? But those are, and they seem like basic things, but I think so much of law and academia expects you just to burn the candle at both ends, right? And you're exhausted, right? So you get home, you got 50 more emails to answer. You're like, okay, I'll just shove some popcorn in my mouth, and you go do the emails. Emails are never about what you're interested in. Emails are someone else's business all the time, right? So, right, and you do that, and then you're like, you get to bed at midnight. Oh my gosh, got to get up at 6 because I got to commute, right? And you're exhausted, right?
Right.
And that's the next thing I check with people. Like, what is your schedule? How do you structure your days so you're doing the work? And then I would ask, what are the priorities, right? If you're an executive director if you're a CEO and you have staff, are you giving stuff to your staff to do? Are you staying in your zone of genius? Because if you're not in your zone of genius, you shouldn't be doing it. You should hand it to somebody else. These are hard lessons to learn. This year is the year that I got really good at saying, I have a virtual assistant. I'm like, that's for you. Very good. I'm moving on to the next juicy. I'm moving on to the things that I have to do that you can't do. That's how that should actually work. And those are the kinds of questions that I'll ask people.
Wow. So in that, looking at what it is that you're doing, working with women, and you begin to see the direction that you need to go in order to get them focused. Because I think a lot of that is just them focusing and getting clarity, not only on what it is that they want, but also what they're willing to do.
Exactly.
I think a lot of women, as a rule, we have been taught that we are ever ready bunnies. We just keep going and going and going.
And you just hand it to us and we'll just do it. We'll just
and we're the strong ones. We can handle it.
Right.
But what I'm finding is, even in my own personal life, that there are times when I have to shut everything off and I have to take a minute. And I have to give myself space to breathe. I have to give myself room not to be creative and just to enjoy the space.
Exactly.
And I think that is so very important for professional women to know, because when we go back to talking about what you were saying about the law review and being in college, and you do the law review, you get to be able to be a clerk for a judge, and then you're able to move into the higher paying attorney jobs within the organizations, and then now you're trying to make partner, and so you're you're doing all of these things to get all of these places, but how much of it is including self-care? How
Exactly.
much is it is allowing you to love what it is you're doing?
Exactly. And I'll tell you this, that I mean, I gave you the basic parameters of my day, but I do transcendental meditation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there, and you're supposed to meditate twice a day for 20 minutes. And I've started this in late May. And there is not a day that's gone by that I actually, somewhere between 2 and 6, I'm no one can reach me. I'm meditating, right? It's like literally like shutting things down, resetting the batteries. I get up, before I even come near my desk, I've meditated, right? And because that's another way of just making sure that I have the space and I don't burn the battery out on both ends.
That is important. I think that is so important. So I want to get to something else that I had read in regards to you.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about community is essential to transformation.
Yes.
So what does that mean?
Well, let me put it this way: our brains lie, and by that I mean, so
Yes,
one of the they really are they liars?
They
Liars.
lie.
Liars. Well, but let me back up because people are probably like, "What, brainiac?" Like, all right, I gotcha. So when our brains, I don't know the biology this well. Remember, I didn't go to med school, but there are different parts of our brains that serve different functions, right? And at one point, our what our bodies and our brains don't understand is what is really stressful. Now, I'm not saying that things aren't really stressful, right? But there's a difference between, look, animal charging will kill you, and that would actually make a really tasty dinner, and oh no, I got an email, right? Those are two completely different levels of stress, right? And so at one point we'd be like, okay, killing animal. You get your spear, you go, you kill the animal, and what your body would do is, because you were involved in this very physical act, that physical act would help to settle your body down, right? Mm-hmm. That's what when people are talking about fight or flight, that's what they're talking about, right? And because now we're cute, we don't have to go kill our food the same way, and we're in our cute offices and our nice homes, but we still have those responses to things, right? And so the email, someone opened the door, the phone rang, the of your phone, all of those things can trigger that kind of response in you, and you're not doing the physical thing that would actually tamp down that response. And that's what I mean by your brain will lie, right? So your brain's trying to find things that are like, that's really stressful. Oh my gosh. And it actually, and is it life or death? No, for most of us, right? I mean, it's a whole other thing if you're a doctor or something like that, but like for most of us, that stuff isn't life or death, but our brains insist that it is. And we don't actually, and so what is actually helpful about community is that we can actually get people to reflect back and say, oh, oh, you feel that way too. And you actually don't heed the call that there's something wrong in this moment, or there's something wrong with me, or you know what I mean? Right. Like when you get people together and they start talking about the arguments that they're putting together, and people are like, that's a really good argument. Have you thought about blah, 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 blah? People all of a sudden are like, oh, wow, I am good at this, right? They actually get a different picture of themselves. And they get a picture of where their brains are lying. And that's why you need community to actually heal, because otherwise our brains will just sit here and drive us crazy. Right. And just keep lying and just keep feeding you bad data.
That's true. I think in some regards, I say this, I coach authors and help them write their books and help them get past whatever it is. And it's funny you said about the meditation, because that's one of the tools that I use for them when they're overcoming blockages. But I think that it's important that people understand that our brain will automatically fill in missing data, missing information, and it will pull it off of based on prior information that has already been downloaded or uploaded into our brains. And so not all the time can you truly trust that,
Exactly.
because we have memories and we have sensory memories, and it's those sensory memories that get us tripped up
Exactly. Exactly.
because
When
we
I
don't
work
have anything to base it on.
exactly, and when I actually one of the tools that I use to work with clients is called emotional freedom technique. And the purpose of this is to get us embodied and to actually heal the stuff that is imprinted on our body so we can move that sensory stuff so we're less by whatever our bodies have remembered. Exactly.
Right, right. So I think that the work that you do is so needed and necessary, and especially for women. And I can only speak of women of color because, you
Mhm.
know, I'm a
That's where
Black
we
woman.
live. Right.
And so I know for us, and it was a conversation I had with my eldest son. I know in the marketplace, in the professional marketplace, there is the white male, the
Mm-hmm.
white female, the
Mm-hmm.
black female, and then
Mm-hmm.
the black male.
Mm-hmm.
And so the black female has to do three times as good as her counterpart in order to get the recognition, but there's no guarantee that the recognition
Right.
is going to come.
Exactly.
But even in the mindset that I've got to work harder than my counterparts if I want to be treated even better than my level of respect in the marketplace. And so I think a lot of times that pressure is what we put on ourselves to be successful. And that's what drives us. We've got to get this done. I can't sleep tonight, so I'll have to take this Adderall, or I have to drink all of this coffee, or I have to drink these Red Bulls and pop these amphetamines so that I
Exactly. And
can
I have to
stay
drink
at
wine
work.
at the end of the day so I can actually go back to
Yes,
sleep.
right. And so I think when we do that in college to get through,
Mm-hmm.
but we're carrying those bad habits into our professional life because we haven't developed those tools to be able to have a balance. And I don't necessarily believe that there's a work-life balance,
Yeah,
but
I
I
don't
do
either.
believe that there is a way to have a balanced life.
Right, exactly, exactly. And one of the first things I ask my clients about is tell me about your sleeping patterns, because that'll tell me everything, right? And if you get less than 6 hours of sleep a night, it's like you're drunk. You're functioning as if you're legally drunk every day, right? So like, are you drunk or are you sober? Like, we start there, then we'll see what else is happening. But it's true, and we are doing this in the face of very real socioeconomic realities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I mean, the question is, who are we serving? Who are we
Right.
rebuilding? Who are we serving? And I think that's actually that's the core question that we all have to ask.
I don't think that we think about that. I don't think that
Mm-hmm.
that becomes a part of the dialogue that we have with ourselves, because let's face it, we have dialogue with ourselves on a regular basis, whether we
Yes, we
want to
do.
admit it or not.
Exactly. That's right.
And so understanding that, I have to put myself in a position to where I'm saying, okay, I know this is my current reality. This is the situation that I'm faced with. How do I get from point A to point B and still maintain my sanity in the process of all of it?
Are you familiar with Rachel Rogers? Bleh. Rachel Rogers, We Should All Be
I've
Millionaires.
heard of her. Yes.
Amazing book. We Should All Be Millionaires. But in that book, she talks about doing thought work, right? And this is the process of how do we talk to ourselves to talk ourselves down from some of these positions, right? It is about taking the time to get to acknowledge what we see, like what's the story we're making up, what do we actually know about the situation, and then how do we craft our new way forward about something. And that's like that, talking to ourselves is actually really, really, if you're not in the midst of community, to do that for ourselves is actually a really important tool to have in your tool bag to move things
Mm-hmm.
forward.
I think it's important. I know for me, it's very important, because I tell people I'm busy by choice, because I
Mm-hmm.
don't have to do the things that I do. I
Right.
do them because I choose to do them, and because it helps me attain the goals that I have set for my life going forward. So understanding that's my mindset, and that may be where I'm at. I have to have these conversations with myself, because sometimes it's kind of like, Michelle, what did you do that for? That is not focused on the direction that you're trying to. What was that about? And I have to go back and I have to begin to think about, okay, what motivated that behavior, that action, that thought process, and really get honest with myself about where I am and what is my motivation behind it, what caused me to get there. Because if I can identify the cause, because there's such thing as the cause and effect.
Yes,
if I can identify the cause, then I can understand why I got the result that I got and what I need to do going forward not to get the negative result that I got again.
Right.
And so that means I have to create new synapses. I have to create new opportunities to put additional tools in my toolbox so that I'm not performing in that manner going forward.
Right.
And I think women we don't think all the time. It takes us some time to get there. And a lot of times, by the time we get there, we try to figure out what took me so long to get here. It's because we had to undo all of the stuff that had been poured into us, and we had to release all of the junk that we allowed people to put into us as if we were trash cans, and be able to determine who we are. So I'm in insurance, and so I see what the executives go through. I see what is happening in that regard. And I have to often ask myself, I even had them come to me asking me if I wanted a specific position, because if I wanted it, it was mine. And I had to go back. The money was good. That was the only good thing, was the money.
Right.
Because it was taking me from where I was to where I didn't want to be. And I had to be real honest with myself and have a real honest conversation. Although the money is good, and although it would take me into another income bracket, which is always a good thing, is it going to allow me to do the things that I say are important to me, that I want to do? And then every time I asked myself that question, no matter how I asked it, the answer was always no. So then I had to come back and I had to tell them, thank you, but no thank you. And I had someone tell me, I had a coach on the podcast once before, and she says, why is it every time we tell somebody no, we feel like we have to justify the no? She said that if we say yes, we don't say, well, you want to know why I said yes? I said yes because, do you want to know why else I said yes? And I said, and do you want to know why else I said yes? And I didn't think about it that way until she said it. And so when she said it, I stopped explaining my no's.
That's exactly it. No is a full sentence. Just no.
So what is so hard for us as women in these professional positions and careers? Why is it so hard for us to say yes to everybody else and not say yes to ourselves?
Because we're trained to, it doesn't matter what our skin color is. That's how we're trained as females. Our job is to serve and to say yes. That's you know what I mean? Like if you have a little girl, like if you think about the littlest of girls, would you do this? No. Oh, don't be bossy. Don't be mean, right? If they were male, we would never tell them that, right? You were just like, oh, look at that. He's standing up for himself, right? No, but when girls do that, there's pushback immediately. And we immediately tell her, no, you're not being nice. Be nice and say yes. Like we do that. Like it doesn't matter. Again, it doesn't matter what your skin color is. That's how we're trained as girls. Of course, we get to be adults and we're like, yes. And we don't think anything about it because that's what we're supposed to do until finally, our blood sugars up to the sky and our blood pressures, it takes our body saying, stop it, before we actually we may still never learn that lesson, right? But we're trained this way. We are simply trained this way to say yes, 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 yes. And the work that you do and the work that I'm doing with clients is to say, no, no, this is actually my priority. I have to work on this. No, thank you for thinking. I mean, I have to tell people how to say no. Thank you for thinking about me. I can't do it at this time, but have you considered so and so? Right? Like, there's always a way of like, I got to help you say. I understand saying no is a lot, so I have to tell you to say no. Right? Like, and I'm not mocking them. It's like it's hard, but this is just the way that we're trained as girls, and this is why I actually love working in my own business, because I don't do anything I don't ask clients to do. And I get to set boundaries, like not just for my clients, but for myself as well, right? So you are going to get some sleep. You're going to stop that right now and you're going to go to bed, right? I set these boundaries with myself as well to say, no, you don't get to be up till 1 a.m. You'll get 5 hours of sleep and you'll be drunk. Stop it, right? You know what I mean? Right? Like I do the same thing with ourselves, but this is training. This is just hardcore training.
I had this same coach said something that just kind of went for me. She said, every time that you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And every time you say no to something, you're saying yes to something else. So if we have that in our mindset, so if I'm asked to work overtime and I know that I've got plans to do something else, so I'm if I say yes, then I'm saying yes to them and I'm saying no to myself.
Exactly.
So if I tell them no, I'm not going to be able to do that, then I'm saying yes to myself and I'm saying no to them. And exactly. I think that it's empowering when we begin to have the conversation like that. When it's almost like even in some of the work that I've seen done with victims of trauma, whether it's PTSD or rape victims or people that have seen murders happen or whatever the trauma is. And so one of the things that they have to learn how to do is to trust themselves again. And so even in corporate America, at some point in time, we lose sight of who we are. We've lost sight of the person that we have been created and destined and purposed to become this person that is acceptable in this work environment. Right. And by this community of people that we have given all of this power to prove whether we're worthy or not too. And so in that, when I learn how to say no, not only to myself, but to other people, then I'm taking back that power that I gave away. Because now I'm making me the focal point and I'm allowing me to be the most important part of the equation in my own life, and them or that situation to take the secondary or a lesser role in my life. And I know for women across the board, that mindset has been difficult. I mean, even with the authors that I work with, it's still difficult because some of them have imposter syndrome.
Yes, I see clients with that all the time.
So let's jump into that just for a few minutes, because I'm finding that a lot of people are dealing with the imposter syndrome. Why is that all of a sudden? I know it's been going on forever, but all of a sudden now we are starting to recognize the damage that it is doing in individuals' personal and professional lives.
I think we're recognizing, well, actually there's the seminal book about imposter syndrome just came out 20 years ago, right? Yes. It's very, very new. And a lot of the ways in which professional lives impact women, like that research is just getting done. And, and these are the things that we walk around and we think, oh, it's just, we don't talk to other people about it because it's like, oh, it's just me. Oh, I'm the only one who feels this way. And we also believe the content of imposter syndrome. Like when you're struggling with it, you actually believe it, right? You actually do think, oh, I'm going to get found out. Oh, that wasn't really good. Well, I got through this. Like we actually do think this until you actually need somebody else to say, this, you've done well with this every single time. You're making up a story here, right? So I think it's just, again, systematic ways in which women deal with their professional lives it's new to be studied, it's new to be articulated, and we're just getting to a point where like, oh, you too, oh, you have that too. It's I think that's why, I think that's what it is. We just, who knew? Our mothers didn't talk about that.
No.
Right? I'm not saying, but you know, our parents didn't talk about that. Their parents didn't talk about that. I was talking to somebody. The word sexism didn't show up until 1960. So there's like a whole group of women before 1960s who like, they lived their lives, their things were complicated, it had something to do with the power dynamic between men and women, but they didn't have the word sexism to explain it. You don't have
right.
you don't have the terms, you don't have the, you don't articulate what's happening to you. You know, it's going to look like something all of a sudden happened, but it's not all of a sudden. It's just that no one actually articulated it until a certain point.
Right. So now that it's out here, women, and I've had women say to me, and I've looked at them kind of sideways, you know, I really feel like an imposter. And I'm like, why do you feel like an imposter? Did you not do the work to get here?
Exactly.
Are you not worthy of the accolades and the benefits that you are now receiving because you're here? But I just don't feel like I should be here.
Right.
Who told you
feeling.
that?
It's a feeling. It's not, there's no
where did that come from?
Right.
But it's almost like sometimes I feel as if it is genetic, that somehow it got passed down through our genes. And now we feel guilty about our success because the people around us or the people before us did not experience the success that we're experiencing. So now I feel like an imposter. I don't feel worthy of it because I don't have anything to compare it to. I don't have a point of reference to make me feel like it's justified, like I deserve it, because I've never been here before. I've never done this before. This has never happened to me before, and all of that. And it's funny that we're even having this conversation because earlier today, my last book that I published last year just got an award. It ended up as a finalist at one of the major literary awards. And talking about this, you know, I was excited and whatnot when it happened. And I said, well, I'm going to hold off and say anything, you know, until you get the little placard,
right,
you know, to put on the book, and then you can put it out there. And, but why hold it? What is my motivation for keeping it quiet just until I get that little sticker that proves that I'm not telling a lie about getting this award? You know what I'm saying? Exactly. And so even in that simple thing, we have this mindset that somebody is not going to believe it. That would be the only reason why we wouldn't tell the information, whether we are honestly admitting it to ourselves or not. That would be the reason why we're not admitting it. Are you an avid reader? Have you purchased your copy of Desperate Housewives of Biblical Proportions? You are definitely missing out if you haven't. Desperate Housewives of Biblical Proportions is an award-winning finalist in the Religion Christianity category of the 2021 Best Book Awards, sponsored by the American Book Fest. To purchase your copy, please visit my website at www.michellepjones.com and click on the Literary Project/Books page and learn how the 7 matriarchs and even women today deal with their personal and our spiritual relationship with barrenness. Now, don't forget to purchase your copy today at www.michellepjones.com.
You know, when you're writing business copy, right, to like, you know, sign up for my thing, you know, that's one of the hardest things. It's hard for me to do that because it's like I keep thinking, oh, I don't really have anything to say. Like I can't, I don't have testimonials, and I don't know, I don't really have any client successes. And then it's like, stop it. Right? It's just, and if I think about it for like, it doesn't even take 3 minutes and I've got like a page, and it's right. It's the same thing. It's just like, it's like it's like, why am I living here? This isn't the reality. Look at this. people have done this work with me, not the person down the hall, right? Me, right? But I think it's not a rite of passage, but again, it's like how we get trained. We're also taught that girls shouldn't brag. Like, I mean, it's like the same way that we should say yes to everybody, like, oh,
Humility.
we should be humble and girls shouldn't brag. And besides, we're not good at math and blah blah. Like all of the noise, the claptrap that we hear about what it is to be girls. I think that all translates into, oh, was it really me? Blah blah blah. And we'll actually give away what is actually the praise that we deserve for the work that we do. The unbelievable work that we do.
And I think that is so important for women all over to begin to understand, to stop giving our power away.
Yes.
Yes. When we step into that space and we say that we're experiencing imposter syndrome, then we're giving our power away.
Exactly.
When we don't share the accolades, but we'll easily share the negatives, we're giving our power away.
I have to say, I keep saying, may I be as humble as a mediocre white man who is never humble, right? They are never humble, right? And yeah, to step, like, they're mediocre, they can own this, that, and the other thing. All right, look.
And that's one of the things that I think that we have to begin to see. One of the girls that I work with, she has a saying that I have adopted as my own, because there are situations to where you don't ask for permission, you ask for forgiveness. Mm-hmm. There are always situations in our lives where we don't ask for permission, you ask for forgiveness. Mm-hmm. That you are empowered to make decisions and choices that best fit the situation in that time period, for that moment in your season of life, that 20 years later may have no bearing. 5 minutes after it happens, it may have no bearing.
Right.
But you have the power to make a decision in that moment and then go back and say, well, this is why I made that decision. Mm-hmm. And when you give the explanation of why you made the decision, it makes all of the difference in the world, because you maintained your power. And right. I think in our own lives, as we get ready to close down the show, I want to share this to our listening audience, male or female. Don't give your power away to other individuals, because they don't deserve it.
And
you worked for it. They're not going to give it back to you. You worked for it. And every time you give your power away, you're giving a small part of yourself away.
Indeed.
And you can't continue to do that, because it's almost the same concept as this. When I was growing up, I'm the youngest of 4 kids. And so all the time I wasn't listened to. And so I would get so angry and so upset that I would say, I'm just going to give you a piece of my mind. And I remember my mother saying to me one time, if you keep giving people pieces of your mind, you're not going to have anything left.
I saw that coming. Yes, exactly.
And so that reminds me of that very thing. If you keep giving your power away, if you keep giving little pieces of yourself away to your job, to people, because you're not willing to say no, because you're not willing to be honest about not wanting to do something, but you do it anyway because you think you're supposed to.
Right.
To keep the peace. That's it.
Yeah.
To keep
we're keeping the peace. The keeping peace isn't worth it. Doesn't keep peace within you.
And my niece says it this way: I'm going to protect my peace at all times. And at some point in time, we have to realize that you also have to protect your grace, because you have to give yourself grace in order to move forward after you've made some mistakes or after things didn't work out the way that you wanted it to. So, Dr. Michelle, it has been a pleasure speaking with you.
Definitely. It's been a pleasure for me. Thank you for having me.
So this is opportunity that I want to give you to share anything that you want to share with our listening and viewing audience.
Excellent. So if you want to know more about what I do at Resistant Vision, you can go, let's say you always get this backwards. There's the website, resistantvision.com. If you are a scholar who is eager to get your stuff under review and bypass the editors, I have a program for that. You can email me at michelle@resistantvision.com. And if you are a lawyer, I'm actually doing, I will be live commenting on, what is this called? It's basically how to talk to clients with ease. It's going to be a law line continuing legal education class. It's going to go live on December 9th. So if you're on law line, go ahead and check it out. And yeah, you got to learn how I help lawyers set boundaries so you can talk to your clients.
Important to set boundaries. So that's a great place to begin to end the show. So, you know, as you guys go about your day, male, female, it doesn't matter. As you go about your day, remember the most important person in the equation of your life is you. And so whether you add or you subtract, it's totally dependent upon how you see yourself and how you treat yourself and how you love yourself. So my encouragement to you today is, before you love someone else today, show yourself some love, set some boundaries, and then move forward with whatever it is that you have next to do in your life. So this is your girl, Michelle, with Dr. Michelle on Girls Talk Real Talk, because when girls talk, just about anything can happen. So thanks for tuning in.